Hello, this is our cultural presentation on football slash soccer, as called in America, by these group members. So what is football culture? Football culture is gathering of players, managers, fans over a simple game where you just kick the ball to the other side's net. As simple as it is, it gets way more complicated when you look into the culture aspect of football, where it can impact things like landscape or even wars to people's stereotypes to racism. It's how deep the game goes. When did football arise? Football arose it was played earlier in China and seen from earlier where they played with soccer as in stone or leather. It wasn't actually played traditionally until 1848 in London, England, where it was played before in England, but was actually banned due to it being too violent and two people actually died during playing football. So the rules were made in London in 1848 officially and started the FA Cup, which is a traditional cup that still goes around in England to this day. What differentiates soccer from other sports? So soccer, unlike American football or things like cricket, actually is very wide when it comes to players from around the world. As you can see, green here is the soccer sports, and American football, and baseball, and basketball. Soccer dominates most of the world. As in, if you were to be from Russia, and you was to play in Brazil, and you were to support some random club in Europe, you can speak Russian, and you can speak Portuguese, and you can support the same club. You'd understand the same traditions, you would go through the same words. It doesn't matter where you're from necessarily, you can support the same club. That's what beautifies soccer from other sports. Its ability to unite different cultures and traditions, all to support one certain club. That's it. Now handing it to Anis, where he'll present the aspects when it comes to gender, men and women, to soccer.
Go.
Hello everyone, I'm Anis. So I'm going to talk about women and men's soccer. So first, let's talk about women's soccer. So a journey of perseverance. So divided into women's soccer through the lens of intercultural communication, we will be focusing on the journey of perseverance that female soccer have experienced across different cultures. So historically, women were not encouraged women were not encouraged to play soccer. In fact, many nations even banned women from playing soccer. By the early 1900s, in 1921, for example, the English Football Association officially banned women from playing soccer on the grounds, and they say that it was unsuitable for women. And over time, despite gender barriers and cultural restrictions, women fought for their place in the sport, overcoming stereotypes and discrimination. Women's soccer reflects perseverance and challenges the cultural norms around the world. And next, now I'm going to talk about gender inequalities in women's soccer. So gender equality is one of the main challenges that women face in soccer. This manifests in many forms, such as pay disparities, fewer opportunities, and less media coverage. For example, let's see the pay gap as an example. So the pay gap between male and female soccer is huge. So for example, the 2000 the 2018 men's World Cup prize pool was around $440 million. On the other hand, like 2019 women's soccer prize pool was only like $30 million. So the next thing is intercultural communication help us understand these inequalities are not just not just about the gender, but also shaped by cultural values. So for decades, sports like soccer are seen as a masculine or as a man domain, and as a result, female athletes have been systematically undervalued, which affects women's ability to compete or to be part or to be successful in this sport. However, in recent years, we have seen so many changes, so many like positive shifts so for example, in the US, women's national team fought for the equal pay despite their major success in the World Cup. So it demonstrates the power of intercultural communication in addressing gender inequality. So the next thing I'm going to talk is breaking gender stereotypes in soccer. So another critical issue in women's soccer is the challenges of breaking gender stereotypes. So traditionally, soccer has been seen as a male-dominated sport, and women who play soccer are often stereotyped as being an infeminine. These stereotypes are reinforced by cultural norms and the media, so which have historically portrayed women's sports as less exciting or important. It's not that important by media. So traits such as assertiveness and competitiveness in soccer displayed that are embraced in male athletes. So when a female player is aggressive or highly competitive, she is often labeled as a too emotional or infeminine. However, women athletes like Abby Weinberg and Megan Rapinoe have challenged these notions, showing that being strong is just it's not being strong, like competitive and a leader does not diminish their femininity. Historically, aggression and dominance have been traits associated with masculinity, and when women show these traits in sports, it changes traditional gender roles. Intersectionality. If we talk from an intersectionality perspective, these issues becomes more complicated when we factor in intersectionality. So like a term coined by Krishal, women of color in soccer face both gender and also racial biases. So creating unique challenges. It creates more unique challenges. So, for example, Black and Latina athletes have to face additional stereotypes, or they are more often criticized for being too aggressive in ways that the white counterparts. Okay, so now let's talk about a global perspective on women's soccer. So women's soccer is embraced differently across the globe. So in countries like Sweden and Norway, gender equality in sports has long been a priority, and these countries have seen strong growth in women's soccer leagues and national teams. In contrast, Brazil banned women from playing soccer for nearly 40 years, from 1941 to 1979. This this ban was like rooted in cultural benefits. Their soccer was a male activity, and which persisted even after the ban was lifted. And then the next thing is the globalization. So the globalization role. So as the world has become more interconnected through globalization, women's soccer has gained international recognition and support. Even events like the FIFA Women's World Cup and as well as global media exposure have contributed to challenging and changing the traditional cultural norms around women in sports and soccer. Globalization is helping women's like soccer spread across borders and cultures, encouraging the dismantling of gender-based limitation in countries with more traditional views on women's role in sports. And the next thing I'm going to talk is the power of media in women's soccer. So women's soccer has faced major challenges, as I said in the presentation. So like including the 1921 FA ban, like media representation. So the way women's soccer players are like described in the media often reinforces gender stereotypes. So female athletes are frequently portrayed as emotional or gritty, while male athletes are described as tactical or dominant. So reinforcing gender norms. So these portraits include how we perceive women's abilities in sports. Describing females athlete in terms like emotional or gritty can undermine their competition or competence and skills, while focusing on dominance and tactics for male athletes reinforces the data that sports are male dominated. Then another thing is the social media. So social media influence. Social media has become a powerful tool for female athletes, so allowing them to bypass traditional media like filters and directly engage with fans, which is a really great thing. So for example, female athletes like Abby Weinberg and Megan Rapinoe and Marta Vieira da Silva have used their platforms to challenge these stereotypes. So for example, Megan Rapinoe is known for her leadership both on and off the field, and advocating for social justice and playing soccer in the highest level. These athletes have shown that women can be powerful, competitive, and still embrace their femininity, pushing back against like societal expectations. So this has given women in sports a platform to voice their challenges, advocate for gender equality, and challenge stereotypes. And the next thing is a key concept. So the language used in the media plays a significant role in shaping like perceptions of gender in sports. When women athletes take control of their narratives, they help shift societal views toward equality. So that was the whole part of like women's soccer. Moving to men's soccer. So men's soccer. So men's soccer, just like women's soccer, men's soccer is not like women's soccer. So for example, men's soccer, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, men's soccer have more recognition. So I'm gonna just based on that, then I'm going to talk cultural diversity in men's soccer. So it's basically that like soccer brings people together from different parts of the world, like no matter the cultural like background or like races or anything. So men's soccer unites fans and players across diverse cultures. So so I'm gonna start with like clubs and national teams. So like in the clubs, let's talk with the players. Start with the players. So players from different countries come into the same sport, like in the same club, and they play for the same club. So for example, I support Liverpool, and in Liverpool there are like different like players from different countries. So but they share the same values in the same club. Just like in national teams, just like France. So like France, like maybe around like half of its players are from like foreign born, so such as from like Africa or something like that. So the thing is that soccer unites the people from every country, like from different backgrounds, and also soccer serve as a bridge for intercultural communication, like and understanding. So talking about the fan, so I support Liverpool, like I said. So people from other countries I met, they also support from Liverpool, but we are not from the same country, but we still share the similar ideas, like similar attitudes toward our club. So how our club is doing, how we're competing or something like that. Even if we support different clubs, so but we are still in the soccer like domain, so we can still communicate with each other. That we can talk about our soccer like games or something like that. Yeah. And so despite all of these cultural differences, soccer brings unity and shared passion among like soccer fans and also soccer players. So and the next thing is just like in women's soccer, men's soccer also has some stereotypes. So one of the main stereotypes in men's soccer is that like people think that Europeans like mostly support like football, but soccer, but it's actually not true. And also another fact is not only European clubs are that good in the world. So that is a kind of stereotype. But in fact, there are some countries that we don't really pay attention, but they really do great on like competitions. They have a lot of great performances on like World Cup and world stage. So for example, like people think that players from like soccer-rich nations such as England, France, Germany, so they like not only they have like passion for soccer, but some countries such as like in Africa, we can say like Ghana or Senegal, they have a strong team. Although they are kind of like poor countries with like a little amount of people, but they still do a lot of great performance in the World Cup. So Ghana, like in the last World Cup, they competed well against the Portuguese. So Portugal is one of the best football teams like in the world, but they competed really well. And then another thing is, according to I put the source like the sociology from the sociology lens. So soccer challenges societal assumptions and foster inclusivity. So the article explores how soccer is a way of reflecting and reshaping cultural identity. So it also shows how these fan groups challenge these stereotypes. So through their passion and activism within the sport. Okay, so now my part is over, and now I'm handing it out to Prashant. He's speaking about clubs and fans culture.
Hey, it's Prashant, and I'm going to talk about European club culture. And when it comes to Europe are the big footballing continent of the world. Like every big clubs, every elite players, every elite nations in footballing world exists in Europe and plays in Europe. And every player, every manager, every footballing staff dreams of one day playing or doing footballing job in Europe. And every European country has their own league, and every league has their own culture and own way of communicating messages to oppositions, to fans. And when it comes to teams from France and Germany, they like to show tifos of some kind of film scenes or some kind of anime scenes which can intimidate the foreign players or the opposition sides. And here is one of the tifo shown by the fans of AC Milan versus the game between Paris Saint-Germain. And the teams like England and Spain, they usually sing their chants before the game, during the game, to put pressure on opposition team and to make their player feel safe and and to give the back supports to the players. And one of my favorite chant is from the team London, from the London-based team called Chelsea, which I support, and also from Arsenal, which talks bad about the other teams, and it goes like, what do you think of Tottenham? Shit. And what do you think of shit Tottenham? And we just sing about Tottenham like weird sports and weird sports. And next slide, please. And collectivism culture in European club generally shows the togetherness of fans in the footballing nation, in the footballing environment, and Europe being the giant hub of football, every player from every nation comes here to play and to manage the clubs, and which creates an equal environment for every race, every gender, regardless of their gender, their race and their background. They are all accepted in the football community. And also, especially talking about the countries like Germany, they have a rule called 41 to 51, where 51% of stakes are required to be owned by the fans of the club rather than any cooperative or private companies or industries, and which also helps clubs and fans to communicate with each other more transparently, and also to let fans protect their own values, own beliefs, which they have invested in their clubs. Can I get the next slide? European club culture and tolerance. When talking about football, in early 1940s, 1950s, there was a big problem of racism. But nowadays, in European football, the racism has significantly decreased due to the efforts of football associations around the European continent. And one of the campaigns which Footballing Federation of England conducted was "Say No to Racism," which made players mandatory to get in their knees before the match and be in silence for 1 minute. And also talking about LGBTQ community, the Premier League has started the initiative of making captains wear a rainbow color armband, which captains are required to wear throughout all the match without writing any agendas in their captain armbands. And for the next part of the presentation, I would like to call Krishal, who is going to talk about club culture around the world.
I'm Krishal, and I'm going to be talking about football culture around the world and club culture as well. So there are different forms of expression between fans and cultures around the world. So, for example, in South Africa, it has one of the biggest soccer cultures. One of the biggest clubs there, Kaizer Chiefs. They're known for their chants, their singing, their dancing, and especially the iconic vuvuzelas, which is a musical instrument like this. And they add their own unique way of expressing their support for the clubs there. Then moving on to South America, countries like Brazil and Argentina, soccer is more like a celebration, a form of like festival, where there will be colorful stadiums. Fans will all dressed in their national jerseys with displays of large flags, and they have like chants. It's a way of uniting everyone in the country. As previously mentioned by Hein, it's a universal language that transcends the social classes. Then going to like Asia, like in Japan and South Korea, like clubs like Urawa Red Diamonds in Japan and FC Seoul in Korea. They're more, the soccer culture there is more reflective of their cultural identity of being a low context culture, where they are more organized, they're more respectful, but that doesn't take away from their vibrant, their energetic displays of like dance movements and support. So according to Borg, like soccer culture like unites people from all over the world, and it creates a strong sense of collectivism. In countries like Brazil, Argentina, families like for generations they build their bonds by supporting the same team over many years, and this creates like a sense of unity. And in many countries around the world, this collective identity can be seen as a national pride, pride of nationality. When this, like, for example, here, this is in Argentina, where lots of people wearing jersey and waving large flags to support their country.
Italy now rules the world, squeezing out France. And of course, what we really mean is that Italy has won the World Cup of soccer. But that's not actually a bad metaphor for world conquest. You see, today's team sport playoffs are all descended from the tournaments that kings used to hold to keep their armies ready to fight. Even in our own global culture, the World Cup is still very much a tribal showdown. And for some, it explains a lot about the world we now live in.
I'm Franklin Foer, author of How Soccer Explains the World, An Unlikely Theory of Globalization. The soccer teams don't just represent players, they represent social class, they represent religion, they represent nationality. And when two teams meet to play on the field, there's usually something more at stake than just who wins and who loses. Because this is more than a game. On the one hand, the World Cup is a festival of globalization. Everybody in the world is speaking this common language of soccer over the course of a month. It's filled with multinational capitalism. Everybody's tied together by trade. This is exactly the way that globalization was supposed to function in the eyes of its champions. But globalization was supposed to smush nationalism. By tying us all together, we were supposed to be less nationalistic, less tribal. But what the World Cup shows is that nationalism can coexist with globalization. There's nothing in tension between the two. And in fact, they may feed off of one another. The flip side of the beautiful game is that there is this undercurrent of nationalism, of tribalism, and it inspires so much passion. And these passions, which can be totally beautiful, can also turn into something quite ugly and quite dark, as we can see with all the outpourings of racism in the stadium, the outbursts of hooliganism that seem to mar the game, even under the best of circumstances and the best of times. I think Italy has surpassed England as kind of the greatest bastion of racism in Western European soccer. You have black players from Africa who are constantly taunted, who get monkey noises thrown at them when they touch the ball. And I think that's because Italian society is traditionally so much about the family, so much about the town, And the threat posed by immigration is so much greater there than a lot of other places, and you definitely see it in the racism. Iranian women historically have been some of the biggest fans of the game. But when the Islamic regime took over after the revolution in 1979, they didn't like soccer and they tried to shut it down. And one of the ways that they tried to shut it down was to take women out of the game, out of the stadium, because they didn't want them exposed to guys in shorts, and because they didn't want them exposed to the kind of passions that you see in the stadium. And so women were shut out of the stadium. And earlier this summer, we saw a bigger victory where President Ahmadinejad reversed this ban of women in the soccer stadium. And his logic was very interesting. He said that he wanted to let women in because he wanted them to be a moderating force on the Iranian men who were getting too excited, too blasphemous in the course of these celebrations, and maybe women could help calm down the passions in the stadium. Soccer bottled up. If you try to repress it, over the long run, soccer fans are going to get angry because they care so deeply about this game. And he worried that the stadium would end up being the prime site for a revolution against the Islamic regime. I think that the people who are opponents of the regime, especially a lot of the Iranians living in exile, view World Cup as an opportunity to make a statement against the regime. And so you saw the women at this pub wrap the Iranian flag around them like a chador. They were essentially appealing to this older tradition of nationalism where the Iranian flag and the idea of Iran as a nation was independent of Islam. And I think that there was probably an ironic gesture that they were trying to show to you. I've done a study of where I decided to look at what type of society, what type of government best fosters a World Cup winning team. And so I went back and looked at the results of all 17 World Cups. And I tried to see, how did communist countries do against capitalist countries? How did fascist regimes do against democracies? How does the European Union fare? How do oil-producing nations fare? But if you look at the results over time, what you see is that social democracy produces the most World Cup winners, and it produces the best teams in the tournament, where even the worst social democracies do better than the worst authoritarian governments, the worst populist regimes. And so social democracy over time produces the best World Cup teams. The appeal of soccer is really the passion that it generates. Politicians want to glom on to anything that generates as much power and as much emotion as soccer. And the game is really the single most globalized phenomenon on the planet, more than McDonald's, more than anything that the World Bank has ever done, and you see that in the World Cup.
That item was produced by Greg Schopa and edited by Brian Gardner. And by the way, today's World Cup final in Berlin was held in the same stadium that Adolf Hitler had built for the 1936 Olympics. Now, Hitler tried to use sports to advance his views of racial superiority, and perhaps, just perhaps, that makes the anti-racist thrust of this year's World Cup all the more fitting, and it was a great World Cup.
This concludes our intercultural presentation that speaks about soccer culture through the perspectives of men, women, clubs, fans, international clubs and teams, and many perspectives through intercultural communication, such as tolerance, racism, stereotypes, and just overall speaks about soccer culture and how it affects the world and how it comes together. Thank you.
Thank you so much.